my friends. Thanks for being here. JR Dukes at your service. Come on in. Appreciate you being here with me. You are at the home of the free-minded patriots. We just hit the go button, so everything is just now going live. Let me make sure everything is working correctly. If you're having any trouble hearing me, as always, please put it in the comments so I know you're having trouble picking up the sound. We generally don't have a lot of problems, but obviously if we do, just let me know. So hello to our friends on Twitch. Hello to everyone on the X platform. And of course, on YouTube. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you again for coming. You can always find me here on YouTube at JR Dukes. And of course, my webpage is very easy, jrdukes.com. And on the X platform, we are at Reach JR Dukes. All the other platforms, I'm just JR Dukes. All right. And of course, this is what I call a open chat. If you'd like to join the discussion, feel free to do so. I just typed in the link. The good thing about StreamYard now is that as long as I keep using the same template, it looks like the address for joining the discussion is always the same. So I just put it again in the chat. If you have any questions how to use it, just let me know. But the bottom line is you can simply click on it. If you don't want to appear by video, no problem. Just don't use your video. If you'd like to call in, basically just kind of like call a friend back on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you're welcome to do that also. Just call in and you can join the conversation. No problem whatsoever. So my friends, a lot going on today. We're not going to waste a lot of time. We're going to start drilling right into it. I hope everybody is doing well. It's definitely started getting a little chilly down here in Florida. We're not used to having any type of cold weather. And I know most of you might laugh when I say this, but it's probably, I don't know, 58, 60 degrees out there right now, which is a little bit cold for us, although we have been pretty warm all the way up till this point right here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start getting into it. A lot of stuff going on today, just so you know, as people are pouring in right now. Today, we're going to be talking about the fact that the woke Democrats, if you will, folks, they are losing their mind. They are going insane, still trying to accept the fact that Donald Trump has won this election decisively. You have a lot of these pundits coming out now saying, oh, it's not really a landslide. It's not really a mandate. You know what? Who cares? Donald Trump won. He won the popular vote. He overwhelmingly won the Electoral College. That's good for me. It was one of the commentators a little while back, but anyway, he was talking about a Japanese commander, soldier, whatever you want to call him, but during World War II, his name was Lieutenant. Yeah, he was Lieutenant Hirio Ortando. And you probably don't recognize the name, and I'm probably not saying the name correctly. The funny thing is that you have World War II ending approximately 1945. It took 29 years for word to get to this lieutenant that World War II was over and that Japan had lost. Up until the day he found out, he was still fighting the war 29 years after it was over. So we're talking like 1974. Can you imagine that? 1974. I've heard that story before, but I just recently confirmed it by looking into the story and exactly who the soldier, or in this case, the lieutenant, actually was. Well, the reason I bring that up is it reminds me a lot of what's going on right now. You have these Democrats, these woke Democrats, these liberals losing their brains over. It's kind of like, not only do they not accept the fact that Donald Trump has won, it's kind of like they're pretending in their mind that there's still an election going on. Democrats, hello, it's over. It's over. The View, it's over. Donald Trump has won. He is going to be the next president of the United States. No need to fight. Hello. No need to continue on with the nonsense. It is over. So hopefully they can kind of get that message sooner or later. American Nana, thank you for being here. As always, I appreciate that. 31 degrees. So I guess we have it good here in Florida compared to what you are enduring over in West Virginia. I love the state of West Virginia. That whole area is beautiful in that part of the country with all the mountains and whatnot. So at any rate, the great news, great time to be alive. It's always a good time to be alive when you get right down to it. But you know what? Doesn't it feel good to win, my friends? It feels good knowing that the country is now heading in the direction that it should be going. And I'm going to tell you, you guys know that I've been pretty consistent in predicting Donald Trump's win. I knew that the polling was underestimating him. Let's put it to put it mildly, they were underestimating him, and we figured 2 to 3% at least. But even I wasn't quite sure that it was going to be with this type of a landslide. I did predict the Electoral College correctly, but I am pleasantly surprised just how widespread his victory was. He did not just win a little bit here, a little bit there. He improved in all categories across the entire country with all demographics. So outstanding. I'm very happy. Of course, there's always going to be ups and downs. And Matt Gaetz, and I want to talk about that here in a second. Matt Gaetz obviously pulled his name from consideration to head the DOJ, Department of Defense. Now, I have some speculation that we have kind of touched on here at this channel. Hey, do you think that that was a real nomination? And folks, you know, I'm not a big conspiracy type guy. I try to stay out of, is this real? Is this a conspiracy? Is there something they're not telling us? But in this situation, I have to admit, it does seem odd that he takes, and I'm talking about Matt Gaetz, he resigns from Congress abruptly with the nomination. And you know what? That by itself, I can handle it. All right. No big deal. But the fact is, he did it like the day before or 2 days before the report, the so-called sexual conduct report, ethics report was supposed to come out from the House, because once he resigned, the report, as it has been sealed, it's going to continue to be sealed. In addition to that, you know, it's not just the nomination, it's the timing before that report was supposed to be released. And then there's a few other things too. He resigned from this Congress, but he technically did not resign from the next Congress. I just find that interesting too. Now, there are some published reports out there where people are basically saying, no, the way it's worded, he resigned from Congress now and for the future Congress. But I got a question for you. How can you resign from a job, from a role that you have not accepted? In other words, he has not been sworn in. So how can he say, I resign? Does that make any sense? I believe the statement that he officially tenured to the House of Representatives said something to the effect of, I do not intend to continue. But that doesn't say I'm not going to. Do you see my point right there? So I just think there's a real good chance that he's going to either take his seat that he just won, because, you know, he was just reelected. The House of Representatives is elected every 2 years. So he was reelected in his district to his House seat. So that's number one thing to consider. Also, there is speculation that I have found online, just kind of, you know, through the rumor mill, so to speak, where they're basically talking about if Governor DeSantis here in Florida might actually appoint Matt Gaetz as Senator Gaetz from Florida. Wouldn't that be interesting? Senator Matt Gaetz. I don't know. We'll have to see how that all plans out. And I have one final thing, and that is just my personal suspicion. I could see a situation where Donald Trump, of course, will appoint somebody else to fill that seat at the DOJ. But what happens when Congress, for example, they decide to go out of session for 10 days or more? Well, in that event, I could just see a situation where whoever is the head of the Department of Justice abruptly resigns, and then Donald Trump basically gives a recess appointment to Matt Gaetz, and that would be good for at least 2 years. Just interesting. I just think there's a lot of options, a lot of ways that they could actually put this out. So it's just an interesting thing about with Matt Gaetz. Not only that, his pick kind of upset so many people, especially woke Democrats and these rhinos, as we call them. It kind of took the attention off Pete Hegseth. Have you noticed that? It took it away from Tulsi Gabbard and some of the other people. We were not talking about them. At least the so-called mainstream news media was not talking about it as much as they were talking about the others once the Matt Gaetz nomination came in. So it's just an interesting thing to consider. That's just the way that that I think about it. And of course, hello, Rosemary. Appreciate you being here as always. Thank you. And thanks again to American Nana. Folks, if you haven't done so already, please do me a quick favor before we get started. Hit the thumbs up button. It puts the algorithms in motion and it allows this message to get out to each and every person. By the way, if you're new to the channel, welcome. We are all about having a free mind, which means thinking for yourself, not suffering that dreaded disease of indoctrination. That's my sole goal, is to explain things, talk about things, and allowing each and every one of us to make up our minds about what's going on in the world. On my channel, I talk about everything concerning, let's just say, politics, recent events, current events, and I have a special emphasis on legal issues, especially police, legal issues, arrests, dealing with the police, and asset protection, just what I like to focus on. So if you'd like to join our Patriots over here, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and don't hesitate to share this channel with 10 of your closest best friends. Matt, thank you for being here, my friend. Appreciate it. Yes, man, I agree with you. Trump is an extremely smart man. There's no doubt about that. I have a video we're going to watch here in a minute where the people in the video, they're talking about that exact fact. Just the fact that Donald Trump, the way he's learned a lot, folks, from his first administration, which we would expect him to do, but he's trying to set up an administration like Roosevelt had. It's kind of unusual in American politics the way he's doing this, but it's a very smart idea. And the bottom line is Donald Trump is setting up a cabinet that reports to his second in command, the guy that he appointed to that position. It's his name's escaping me right now. But the bottom line is Donald Trump wants to be able to tell his lieutenant, hey, this is what I want done. He picks up the phone, he calls the head, and they're not making their own policy, basically. They're not making decisions on their own per se. They are carrying out the will of Donald Trump, which of course is exactly what we want him to do. We sent Donald Trump back to the Oval Office for a specific reason and for direct intended purposes. And I think that's exactly what Donald Trump is setting up. So briefly, I want to talk about a few opening comments, if you would. So we're all here. We're all having a nice big chit chat. And I like that. I like talking about political events, current events, the things that's going on. But my friends, I want you to know there's something in the world right now that is extremely serious, and I don't want to scare anybody, but it is really true, and that is the situation going over in Ukraine right now. It is the fact that citizens, leaders, all of us, we're kind of walking around in what I call a fog. We're fixated on these debates. These debates are loud, they're disruptive, they get our attention, but my friends, there is a bigger picture. Conversations about the cabinet nominations, or whether certain people should use that bathroom or this bathroom, kind of like what's going on right now on Capitol Hill, all this transgender stuff. This is stuff that needs our attention. But the truth is, when we step back, we see the real problem, and that is right now our world is on fire. And that's the reason I chose the thumbnail that you've probably seen when you clicked on this particular video. We're witnessing right now wars breaking out all across the globe. We have escalating tensions that can be traced back to the complete and utter incompetence, the weak leadership of the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. Russia, of course, is once again threatening nuclear war. Extremely inappropriate, extremely unprofessional, to be blunt about it. I know this is very frightening. I've talked with several of the subscribers to my channel. I call you all my family. I call you my friends. I know I've discussed this with several of you and that you're worried about it. And again, it's not my job to scare the bejesus out of you. That's not what I want to do, because there is good news that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But it is the case that this is very frightening. Nuclear war is nothing to joke about. It's very concerning. We should all be very concerned about it. The developments are frightening, and our leaders just seem like they're kind of just sleepwalking. You know, it's talked about, but then something else is talked about, like the bathroom issue, right? I'm sure that you probably thought about it, but it kind of goes to the back of our mind, and we just cannot allow that to happen. So my intention tonight is to shake off the fog, of what's going on and kind of drill down on this particular crisis and just kind of share some thoughts with you. And at the same time, it is so important that we all collectively pray for all of our leaders, but especially pray for President elect Donald Trump, his cabinet, and the people that are going to be helping him. This is truly a heavy burden to bear. And I can imagine, even though Donald Trump puts a very strong facade, and that's what we need in a leader, no doubt about that, it is also the case that we all need to learn and to lean on God, especially in a time like this. I think that that is pretty well best way that I know how to say it. Now, the good news that I want to tell you on the front end, we don't have any official reporting on this, but there's a lot of rumors, and it just kind of makes sense. I'm very confident that President-elect Donald Trump is currently talking with Russia, specifically the President Putin, and is trying to dial back the temperature. It would be really difficult for me to imagine Putin actually using nuclear weapons. Obviously, there is no winners with nuclear weapons. If he was to use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, the reality is the way the weather patterns work over there is the radiation and stuff would actually spread back over Russia. So I am just very confident Donald Trump, his associates, his cabinet, his people are working around the clock to find a solution to this. And we all know, because we talk about it on this channel, the United States is unfortunately not completely innocent in this situation. You know, you have a situation to where NATO kept expanding year after year, decade after decade, and Putin has been very clear and very loud that he was completely opposed to NATO continuing to expand. And like the example I've been giving, about Texas, if it was to break off and be its own country, and then 30 years in the future, it decided it wanted to be nice and cozy in some type of alliance with Russia, we would be ballistic. Our president, of course, I don't know if it was President Biden, it might not be that situation, but withstanding that, the fact is, we would be raging mad, and I am extremely confident there's no way the United States would allow that to happen. And of course, that's exactly what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. They have, for a very long time, not only been neighbors, but they have been together, unified. And that's with the exception of the last 30 years when, of course, the Russian Empire essentially broke apart. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this and discuss this. And I don't want anybody to panic about this stuff, because this can all get our blood pressures going. And I know I have a lot of viewers that are older, so I don't want to scare anybody. And listen, if you have a little age on you, like I do, we've been through a lot. You know what I mean? We've been through many crises, many problems, and they always seem to work themselves out. And I want you to take comfort in knowing one other thing too. The United States is the most powerful country in the world. Anybody was to attack us, I can assure you, the United States is more than highly capable, along with its allies, to decimate any enemy that would dare come up against the United States. Now, that would not be a pretty scenario. I think in the future, there needs to be an urgent emphasis on what Ronald Reagan tried to employ all the way back in the 1980s. He was made fun of at the time with what they call Star Wars. Y'all remember that, the Star Wars comments? And of course, now I would think they look at that as an asset, as a compliment, Star Wars, because everybody likes the Star Wars movie chain now. We need to do what we've done with the Patriot missile systems in Israel and helping our friends out in Israel. Obviously, the United States has some very superior technology that allows us to effectively shoot down a bullet, aka a missile, with another bullet. And that's exactly what the Patriot missile system does. And I've heard President-elect Donald Trump say repeatedly that he wants to revitalize and he wants to focus on what Ronald Reagan proposed all the way back. I think when he first proposed it was something like 1985, 1986. I could be off a year or two on there, but it has been proposed for a very long time. And it's not something I would want to rely on to prevent a nuclear war, but it would be obviously a fantastic asset to have, that if some type of ICBM or some type of nuclear missile was launched against the United States or one of our allies, we would have the capacity to shoot it out of the air. At least we would have an option. Of course, nothing is ever foolproof. The best situation here is not to engage in this problem to begin with. And again, I think this is God helping our entire world by allowing President-elect Donald Trump to be assuming office very soon. And despite what you hear, President Putin is not crazy. I don't think there's any evidence that he's technically crazy. I don't even necessarily think he's evil. He's done evil things, but you have to learn to see things through his eyes. And it's unfortunate in our country now, people want to hammer even people like me that dare say someone like Putin is not crazy. You want to talk to Putin? Well, you're evil. Just kind of like they're doing to Tulsi Gabbard now for talking to our quote unquote enemies. You cannot solve world problems and not talk to your adversaries. And I think Donald Trump has masterfully demonstrated this with our country. Remember when he went to South Korea and he was at Kim Jong-un at the border, and they became fast friends. And at that time, it looked like that nuclear war with North Korea was imminent. So again, I think at some point, cooler heads are going to prevail. I have an idea as to what a peace plan would look like. And if we get time, we will dive into that. So I hope I've brought a balance to that conversation. We're going to watch some clips I have so we can take a deeper dive into this. If you have questions, again, put it in the comments. Matt, yeah, the pirate ship administration, absolutely. USA out of NATO. All right, yeah, there is definitely a big cost to all that. I'm hearing Pam Bodyford. You know, she would make a fantastic AG. I love Pam Bondi. Of course, she is the former Attorney General from Florida. I have not heard her name flying around or floating around for AG, but that would not surprise me, American Dad. I think that would be a fantastic pick. And my friend Sapphire, thank you for being here. I love Pam Bondi also. Matt saying we consume everything we produce. We allow others to import products to the United States. We are very generous. We also provide protection to Europe while they dump products on us. There's a lot of truth in that, my friend. I don't really think there's much daylight between us on that. And he further states that tariff, China trade imbalance, and European trade. Yeah, these tariffs, despite what the legacy media tells you, it gives our president some real power, a real stick to try to negotiate better trades, just better things in general with another country. Short of war, having tariffs is probably one of the best tools that a president, that an administration has in their tool bag. So I agree with you on that, Matt, and thank you for that. Oh, okay. So Trump has announced Pam for AG about 30 minutes ago. I have not heard that. So that would be fantastic if that's the case. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us, FR. So without further ado, let's get into our first video right here. This is titled Putin threatens to retaliate with strikes against the U.S. Again, we're going to listen to this real quick, and then we will talk about it.
4 days after President Biden allowed Ukraine to strike parts of Russia with U.S.-built and proffered missiles, Putin is threatening to retaliate with strikes against U.S. facilities and says his military hit Ukraine today with a medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile. The Pentagon just responded moments ago. Watch this.
We've seen this type of, dangerous, reckless rhetoric before from President Putin. What we're focused on is continuing to support Ukraine with what it needs.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst reports live from Kyiv. He has been watching all of this up close and was in the top.
The irony here is that this move, in my opinion, to allow the Ukraine military to fire, at least on a limited mile scope, into Russia is a great idea. And they should have done that. But they should have done that at the beginning of this conflict, not now. Right now, it looks weak. It looks provocative. It's just the right solution at the wrong time.
Tunnels with President Zelensky just the other day. Trey, what about this new development?
Yeah, Martha, good afternoon. We know that overnight, Russia launched a new missile into Ukraine, targeting the southern city of the Dnipro. This was the first time that such a large weapon was used on the battlefield since this conflict began 2.5 years ago. And it raises questions.
That is a pretty cool weapon. Did you see that falling from the sky right there? I thought that was pretty. Look how fast it falls down. It looks like it's in a
and
way.
It raises
boom.
questions
Yeah,
about
like
the
3 of
message
them.
that Russia is trying to send. Ukraine initially claimed the missile was an intercontinental ballistic missile, but Russian President Putin says it was an intermediate ballistic missile. The Russian leader said in the future, civilians will be warned to leave areas where more advanced missiles will be launched. Putin.
In case you're wondering, the reason why there's a big debate about whether or not this was what they call a intercontinental ballistic missile, aka a ICBM, is because generally speaking, we associate a ICBM with a nuclear weapon. It carries a payload, and the payload is generally a nuclear device.
Added this about the involvement of the West.
We consider ourselves in the right to use our weapons against those nations that use their weapons against us. And in terms of escalation, we will respond as surely and clearly.
The escalation comes as Ukrainian forces are now targeting deeper into Russia using U.S. and British-supplied long-range missiles, while overnight, the Biden administration approved the transfer of anti-personnel mines to Ukraine. These moves are seen by the Russians as crossing a red line, prompting officials here in Kyiv to brace for an increase in missile and drone attacks.
The whole thing, to me, just seems highly inappropriate. And if you remember yesterday, we watched that video where Joe Biden, a much younger Joe Biden, I might add, was basically stating that any country that would, I should say a nuclear state, that allowed another non-nuclear state to fire weapons into another state, that would be an act of war. And of course, that's exactly what we have done at this particular junction. But the funny thing is, if the Biden administration had been strong and direct and done this correctly without acting like they're scared of their shadow, they could have said the same thing about Iran, except for the nuclear component, to the best of our knowledge. But remember, Iran has been supplying a ton of munitions to Russia, specifically all those drones that Russia was using to attack Ukraine and a lot of the civilian infrastructure. Additionally, you have another nuclear power country, such as North Korea, supplying troops on the battlefield. Now, if that is not a provocation, you feel free to tell me what a provocation is, because that, ladies and gentlemen, is about as bad as it gets as far as escalation goes. That's my opinion. Agreed? Anybody agree with me on that? Let's take a look at this next clip that is similar to what we've been talking about. This is worrying Russia response after Ukraine uses long-range American missiles. And this is on CBS News.
First now to the war in Ukraine. Watch this surveillance footage showing the exact moment a barrage of missiles struck down of the city of Dnipro this morning. That blast left buildings completely battered, including a medical rehabilitation center. The weapon used in that attack is currently in question. Kyiv says it was an intercontinental ballistic missile, but Western officials, including the U.S., are denying those claims, saying it was a ballistic missile, but not an ICBM. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie Daggett is here with us this morning. Charlie, thank you so much for being.
I've been hearing a lot of information that this was actually what they call a hypersonic missile, which effectively means it travels faster than sound. So that alone is extremely troubling.
What's the difference in these?
Distance and payload. And I think we have to, take the Ukrainians at face value. There's a way of raising the alarm without necessarily being alarmist. And ICBM is a big deal because it travels further and it carries a big payload. But as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, that's their initial assessment. And we spoke to people here and said, no, it's a ballistic missile, not an ICBM. I think President Zelensky said the speed and altitude have the same kind of parameters you'd see in an ICBM. But we were told intermediate ballistic missile, not an ICBM. And I know you said, sources told us yesterday the Russians might be intent on testing a new weapon. And as you said, what's the difference? If you're on the receiving end, it doesn't matter whether it's an ICBM or a ballistic missile, but it's a question of reach and payload. And that is why it would represent a significant escalation. It also struck Dnipro, right? Now, we've heard that city before, and it seems like a frontline city because in fact, I've been there when it's come under attack. But it's roughly 140 miles from the nearest front line. We stay there and consider it relatively safe.
See, part of the problem here, my friends, is the fact that they waited too long to allow them to start using the technology we have to hit inside Russia. But up until this time right now, Russia was able to effectively mass and kind of just put together everything from troops to supplies, you name it. They were able to do it and put it right across the border, and effectively it was relatively safe, and it was out of the reach of the Ukrainians. And of course, now this is a major game changer. If I had to just kind of share my thoughts about it, I would say the main reason the Biden administration did this, I don't believe what the press is saying, that they're trying to start World War III. I don't see that at all. It is highly possible that the Biden administration is trying to kind of force Trump's hand as far as continuing to supply Ukraine. There may be a little bit of truth to that, but trying to start World War III, I think that would be a stretch, to be blunt about it. But, then again, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I just don't see that. Who the hell wants to start World War III? Even people that make their money selling military equipment don't want to bring about the end of the world. I mean, let's be straight up and let's be honest about it. Now, of course, you have to take all these matters serious. At the same time, you have to take it with some type of grain of salt, and you have to look at it without being extremely emotional and just going crazy. But remember this, one of the main things that's going on right now, again, this is the J.R. Duke's philosophy. The main thing that's going on right now today, and the reason you see so much fighting and you see tensions building, is because they know that President Trump-elect is coming into office. So what you got going on right now could best be described as a land grab. They're trying to, both sides are trying to put themselves in the best position possible before they actually sit down for negotiations. That's my take on it. Right or wrong, that's the way that I see it. And we'll just have to, I guess time will tell who's right or not. Now, here is the take. I thought this would be a good video to watch. This is the take of the Australians. Of course, the Australians are a fierce defender and partner with the United States, and it's important. I think it's important to kind of see what they think in Europe and what they think down under in Australia. So we're going to take a quick listen to this. Let me make sure I catch up on the comments here. Yay, God, thank you for being here, my friend. Appreciate you taking time to join us. IPO, Putin won't go nuclear. NATO has provoked Russia by going against the promise of not allowing Ukraine in. Exactly. Have you been listening to this channel? Because you sound like a very wise individual. This is exactly what I have been saying for quite some time now on this channel. A land grab deal will be the solution. Much like, okay, you must be reading my mind. Yay, God. Very cool. That's pretty cool. We were just talking about that. And Matt, my friend, all ballistic M's are hypersonic. Yes, they are. The space shuttle was hypersonic. Yeah, there's a lot of hypersonic devices or ships or whatever. Remember the Concorde? That was hypersonic going across the Atlantic. I think you can go from New York to Paris in 3 hours, something like that. And let's see. Hey, Brian, thanks for being here. My worries are that after what Putin said, the Biden administration will still believe Putin is bluffing. There is a lot of logic to that. One thing about Putin that I think the Biden administration definitely gets wrong is, unlike Joe Biden, unlike Kamala Harris, Putin does what he says he's going to do. He's like, do not allow Ukraine to join NATO. I'm not going to allow it. I'm not going to stand for it. And he did what he said he was going to do with the military force. So that is true. Now, as far as his record with nuclear weapons go, he has been what they call saber rattling for some time. I hope he doesn't follow through with what he threatens to do. But to my knowledge, he's never threatened that I am going to hit the United States with a nuclear weapon. I have not heard those words come out of his mouth. What he has said is things along the lines of, our doctrine allows us to do this. When a country does this and this, it's war with Russia. You know, he walks up to that line, but notice he has not crossed that line, at least by my estimation and by what I have heard him say. If you know something different, put it in the comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But Brian, that is a good worry, and that is a good comment, because unlike our leaders, he's not the kind of guy that's just going to say something for the purpose of saying something. I have no doubt that the nuclear weapons has been something he's been thinking about. If I was in his shoes, I hate to say it, I'd be thinking about it too. Because technically, you have part of Russia, although it's a small part of Russia, I believe they call it the Donbass, is actually right now in Ukrainian hands. And you know, that has to P.O. Putin something fierce. I mean, just think about it. Literally, a piece of Mother Russia is in a foreign adversary's hands. That alone would trigger any nuclear country to potentially use nuclear weapons, or what Putin has a lot of, which is tactical nuclear weapons, which basically means smaller nukes meant basically for a smaller type of field. It's not necessarily designed to end the world. It's designed to end a battle or to end a city. I don't really think it's worthwhile splitting hairs on that. It's still a travesty either way it goes. But even President Trump, before he won the election, was very clear in his thoughts, and it was making the news very mad at the time. He just said things along the lines of, I don't see Putin, I don't see Russia losing. And I think that's a clear statement. I think that's a good statement. It makes a lot of sense to me. How in the world is a country, and get this, Russia has more nuclear weapons than the United States. Now, the numbers, we're just playing semantics, all right? The United States has like 6,000, 6,500 nuclear weapons. We have a ton of them that are actually deployed. Russia might have like 7,500 nukes, but a lot of them are not out and ready to be fired. Some of them is questionable as far as their readiness. Clearly, Russia does not have the money, for example, the United States has, to be as ready as we are. And I want y'all to remember something else too. The United States is an extremely powerful country, as we have been discussing in detail on this channel. The United States has literally, for example, one of the nuclear triad deals that we have, and the nuclear triad is essentially the way the United States protects itself against a nuclear war, a nuclear adversary. Part of the MAD, what they call the MAD strategy, MADD, mutually assured destruction. If you bomb us, we're going to annihilate you. It's just that simple. And as far as these submarines go, I need to look up the exact number, but the United States has like 13, 20 of these nuclear submarines, what we call the Virginia class. They got 2 or 3 different classes. These are deadly submarines. These submarines are huge. They're state of the art. And if just one, get this, ladies and gentlemen, if one of these submarines were a country by itself, if it was the country of submarine number 1, that country would be the 7th most powerful country in the world. Just one of our submarines. So just kind of think of that. Now, obviously, we don't ever want to use that, because if you use something like that, you're looking at the end of times. I don't want to be too dramatic. Again, I don't want to scare anybody. It has worked. Fortunately, it has kept the peace for a very long time now, and I would hope that it continues to preserve the peace. Plus, the United States has a lot of friends, like Great Britain. They're a nuclear power. Same for France. France is a nuclear power. I believe Israel's a nuclear power, although they will not officially admit that they are a nuclear power. So you have a handful of countries that have nuclear capabilities, and the United States has nuclear capable friends. So it's just something to think about, that there is a system in place that if, God forbid, somebody was thinking about that, they're going to think long and hard about that, because when they hit that trigger, when they hit that button, their empire, their country will no longer exist. And I just think it's worth pointing that out. So thank you for that comment, Brian. Thank you very much. Sapphire, appreciate you being here as always, my friend. Brian Putin said he is going to mirror and our escalation. Yeah, I think that that's the way it goes. And that's one thing that makes the situation so dangerous. One of the most dangerous games in the world, my friend, is something called the escalation game. We have talked about this too. You get into an escalation game and there are no winners. Somebody does something, someone does something more, and then more, then more. And unfortunately, that's why you got to be very careful, because you can have unintended consequences from that. But you don't ever want to get into an escalation game. It does not have a good ending for anyone. Matt says, I don't care that much about Ohio. Ukraine, no. Okay. I'm not sure if you're joking there, Matt, or what. I was talking about the Ohio class submarines or the Virginia class submarines. I think you're talking about the state of Ohio. I just missed the context. Sapphire, the thing is the Chinese hypersonic missiles can go from Beijing to LA in 10 minutes or less. I know they can go very quickly, but we also have capabilities of detecting that very quickly. And again, that's another reason for the nuclear triad. We have bombers that are always in the air, always in the air. We have submarines that are always all over the world. They are literally buried, for example, underneath the North Pole, under feet of ice. And they're just kind of lying in wait. Same thing with our bombers. They're flying around. And then the third part of the triangle is all of the nuclear silos that we have all across the country, specifically out like in the Rocky Mountains area. For example, I believe it's like North Dakota, South Dakota, going through Wyoming. They have a huge farm of these missiles, if you would. The only negative to those ICBMs, those are ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. The only thing bad about those, if I could say bad, is that a president has to decide to use those within like 15 to 20 minutes tops, because those will be the first thing that would be taken out in a nuclear exchange. So again, I don't want to be scaring anybody. What I'm trying to tell you is that should actually give you some peace, that even if they took out one piece of the triangle, so to speak, the triad, we still have bombers up there ready to deliver a very special delivery, if you know what I mean. And then worst case of the worst case, we have 13, 14, 20 different subs down there. And I'll have to look up the exact statistics. I was watching it not too long ago. They have a huge amount of, I believe they're called Poseidon missiles. And then each missile has like 12 individual separate tips. They're basically nuclear bombs. And each one of those can be directed to a different place. So it's just so lethal and so nasty. I promise you, he doesn't want to play with the United States. But at the same time, we need a wise leader like Donald Trump. You have to give somebody like Putin what we call an off-ramp. You got to give him a way to save face. You got to give him a way to get out of the corner that he is in. And I am confident that Donald Trump is just the person God wants to take care of that exact job. Matt, I feel like I pay for a baby that's not mine. Yeah, that's an interesting context. Thanks, Matt. See, Brian, why hasn't Trump said anything? Do you think he'd call Putin and say they'd halt? I have heard reports, unconfirmed, unpublished reports, that is going on right now. Trump and Putin, along with Elon Musk, by the way, have been having very frequent conversations with Donald Trump, trying to dial down the temperature, kind of putting the genie back in the bottle as much as possible. Again, I think what's going on, and I don't have anything to base this on, I'm just telling you what common sense and the J.R. Duke's tea leaf reading. I think what's going on and why you see so much fighting right now is they're fighting for position. They're fighting that they are in the best position possible when they eventually go to the table to find a way to settle it. Does that make any sense? When you go to the settlement table, you want to have the best position and be in the best position that you can be in. I'm pretty confident that's exactly what's going on. And then my friend Sapphire, Trump was supposed to call Putin to, yeah, that's, I think I have heard that. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Sorry you have to leave, but thanks for visiting. You are a huge friend of the channel, and you have been so generous with your support. And dude, what can I say? I guess I need to get your picture and put a plaque back here on my wall of your face. So seriously, I appreciate you. You're a good friend of the channel, and I sincerely appreciate your time, your comments, and your support. Thank you, my friend. And let's see, Brian Saffer, where did Trump say? Yeah, I have heard stuff like that has been going on. So thanks again, Matt. Thanks everybody's comments. I have heard American Anna that they are speaking to Brian. Wonder what kind of escalation Putin means. Ukraine won't stop using ATOMs or storm shells. Yeah, we don't know. All of this is kind of like reading the tea leaves. I just have to believe that cooler heads are going to prevail, and I just do not want anybody wigging out about this particular situation that's in front of us as of right now. So let's go and take a quick peek at this video, and then I want to land the plane on this particular subject because I don't want anybody wigging about this all night long. So let's just take a quick sneak. I'm going to bounce around this one a little bit, and then we will comment on this at the end of the video.
To discuss on the international stage. Of course, this week, Ukraine fired into Russia for the first time using UK-supplied missiles. And today, the Russian ambassador has told Sky News that Britain is now directly involved in the war. I mean, are we directly involved?
Look, Russia has been trying to extend this war for years. Don't forget, only a few years ago, they threatened a nuclear strike on Denmark, of all countries. This is not the first time Russia does this. It does it the whole time. It's what bullies do when they try and get out of the mess they've caused themselves. And that's what Putin's doing now. I'm afraid I don't listen to the Russian ambassador anymore. He just lies the whole time, and it's completely irrelevant what he says anyway, because he's not listened to in Moscow, and he's completely irrelevant in the United Kingdom. So what we've got to focus on is how do we keep Ukrainians safe? How do we make sure Russia's evil aggression doesn't continue any further? And that's why I think it is perfectly reasonable for Ukraine to use the weapons that it has at its disposal to strike those areas from which it is itself being struck. Why?
So here's the bottom line. The entire world is paying very close attention to what's going on, not only in Israel, between Israel, Hamas, and the Hezbollah, not to mention Iran for that matter. This situation in Ukraine is extremely serious, and everybody knows it's serious. You have countries like Finland, and I believe it's Sweden. They're actually preparing for war. They're having conversations with their citizens. They're telling them to start stocking up on supply and food. And listen, that's only prudent. That's just common sense. And even here in the United States, I want to be very careful because I don't want to scare anybody. I don't care what's going on in the world. It's always a good idea to stock up a little water, to stock up some food, some provisions, some rations. That's just common sense. Here in Florida, we do it all the time for hurricanes, for storms, just for whatever. This last hurricane with Milton, we were without power for 4 days. Now, it wasn't the end of the world. We ended up to go visit family over in Orlando. But the thing of it is, 4 days, it makes the world different when you're living without power and stuff like that. So it never hurts to just use some common sense and stock up on a few provisions just to have them around. Just kind of makes common sense. And I think the Bible even gives us plenty of advice in Proverbs. I can't think of the exact verses, but it's always good to be prepared. One thing I wanted to mention about this video we just watched, Sky News in Australia. Australia is always very sensitive when it comes to war, as any country should be, but especially Australia. They're very concerned. It's kind of like a subtext in Australia. They are blessed and happy to be such close allies, shoulder to shoulder, if you will, with the United States. But when it comes to countries like China, for example, and the escalating tension with China, they are very concerned, just like the Philippines are very concerned about it. But specifically in Australia, they're worried about it because they feel that if there was ever a nuclear problem, or a war, I should say, with China, they always worry that instead of hitting the United States directly to make a point, you could have some country like China basically explode some type of low yield nuke over one of the cities in Australia. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just telling you that's what the people down there worry about. Okay. And it kind of makes sense. In other words, Australia is not a nuclear power themselves. So if you want to make a point, I guess the best way to think about it would be like some exaggerated point where these two guys are about to fight. They're face to face, and yet one of them has a buddy that's right beside him that's smaller, and you decide to go over and beat the hell out of the little guy first to show the big guy what you can do. It's kind of like that. I don't know where they came up with that, but it makes sense to me on some level. But that's what they worry about down under. Don't really know why that is, but I have heard that on more than one occasion from the press in the Australia area, and I have heard it from more than one source in Australia. Again, hopefully none of this ever materializes, and that's that. So try not to worry much on this issue. We just need to be eyes wide open and not delude ourselves into one of my favorite words in the English language is balance. Balance. We don't want to go around worried so bad that we're sick and we can't live our life. I mean, we all die, right? You're not getting out of this world alive. It just ain't happening. So we're all going to check out at some point. That's just the bottom line. We don't want to make it right away either. I get that, but there's no reason to worry. Is my point. There's no reason to worry. We need to pay attention to what's going on, vote for good people, good leaders to make sure that the peace is kept, and at the same time not panic ourselves to where we cannot function. It's just absolutely useless to be doing that. So let's switch gears. We're going to switch gears and let's talk about local events that's going on right now. Obviously, Donald Trump is in the process. He currently is the fastest president-elect as far as setting up his cabinet and things like this. So that's very exciting. We talked about the fact that Matt Gaetz has dropped out, has withdrawn his name voluntarily, according to reports, as far as becoming the head of the Department of Justice, which is unfortunate. But I can tell you right now that they have many ladies, many men that could potentially fill the position and carry out the policies that President Trump-elect would like to install. I think everybody understands that. It's not like everything is Matt Gaetz or bust. And again, I think there's a good possibility that there's some subtext going on here, as we discussed earlier. Don't really have anything to base that on, but I think there is some things going on as far as Matt Gaetz will come back in another form. There's many positions that President Trump-elect could appoint Matt Gaetz to that would probably give him a lot of power and oversight at the Department of Justice that does not require congressional approval, specifically approval via the Senate. The Constitution of the United States states that for certain positions, Congress is to advise and to consent to certain appointments. But there are many appointments that are at President Trump's disposal that he could that he could put him in on. So I wouldn't worry too much about Matt Gaetz. I know he's going to be a great asset for President Trump, and President Trump's agenda is going to go forward. President Trump's been through this before, ladies and gentlemen. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants. I really think he's had plenty of time to think this through. He's got allies like Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk. He's got a lot of good people around him that's given him advice as he needs it, and is coming up with what I would call a grand strategic plan to pull all this together. I don't think it's like playing checkers where you're just doing one move at a time. Okay, well, Matt Gaetz is gone. This is chess, not checkers. I think that's the point that I want to express right here. And my friend Brian, do you think Biden or his administration will change their minds? I'm assuming you're talking about in relation to the Ukraine, the weapons and the permission to use them over into Russia. I guess there's always that possibility, but I would think you cannot give in to a bully. If he would do that, that would be the worst thing he could do. You can't have a situation where someone's threatening you in this type of context, and then you decide you're going to withdraw the permission to use those weapons into Russia. I just don't see that as a good idea. I don't see that as a plausible idea. And okay, so yeah, that's what you're talking about. I think that would be the worst. Does that make any sense? You can't have someone say, you take that back or I'm going to do something else to you. I mean, what are they going to do? They're already invaded Ukraine. I guess they could attack NATO or the United States, but they know what the whoop ass is going to be, right? I don't think there's any other way to say it any clearer than that. They know that there's going to be a problem. Oh, American Nana, those peanut butter cookies sound so good. Oh my goodness. Thank you for telling me. I'll be thinking of peanut butter. Okay, let's move it on. We have talked. Yeah, Brian, you're right. That's a good idea. Not to escalate. I agree. Yeah, at a minimum, he needs to effectively defer to President Trump elect. And folks, listen, I don't know this for a fact, but I just have to believe that President Biden and President elect Trump, even though they hate each other, they are working together at least on some level pertaining to many issues, specifically this war in Ukraine. They have to be. It cannot be such to where they are working in two separate camps. I just don't see that happening. Not with something as serious as World War or this particular war right now. There has to be some kind of coordination going on. I just believe that. And yes, I don't think that they will work towards escalating that anymore. And we will talk about this a whole lot more. So make sure you have your channel, the subscribe, you hit the bell notification. Also, I know that many folks were telling me that the notifications, at least on YouTube, are not always working. Well, what I'm going to start doing, and I've started doing that today on X, but on Truth Social at Reach JR Dukes, and then same thing, Reach at Reach JR Dukes on X. I scratch that. Truth Social is just JR Dukes. Everything is just JR Dukes except for X, which is Reach JR Dukes, and that is in the comments, and it should be in the description. If not, I'll make sure I put it in there when I am done. But all the channels, all my handles are right there, and you could always tune directly in at jrdukes.com. But I'm going to start posting the times ahead of time, so y'all can set your alerts on there, and then that way you know when I go live. It's very difficult for me to have an exact time every day, like every day at 7, we're going to be meeting or something like that. It's kind of difficult, but if it works correctly, YouTube has that great feature of the alerts. I guess X does too. And I'll find the right formula so that it all works out for us. So don't worry too much about that. See, my buddy Sapphire, Pam could have been the plan all along. Yeah, Sean Spicer said this morning that that's the place for good. Yeah, I think so too. And again, like you just said, there is this rumor. Matter of fact, if we have time, I have that article I want to go through where that's this particular article is talking about exactly this. They could end up putting Matt Gaetz in as senator, one of the senators. He'd be the junior senator from Florida. And of course, the other senator is the former governor. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on that guy. He's the guy that was running for the leadership of the Senate, Rick Scott. Yeah, former governor of Florida. So that would be an option. So moving on. In Pennsylvania, we have talked about how they have been trying to steal that Senate seat that McCormick clearly has won. Now, the good news is Scott Casey finally conceded, I believe, just minutes before we went to air. But I want you to know, and we're just going to take a quick peek at this, they had a lot of people getting really PO'd on the way that these illegal votes were going down. So let's take a quick peek at this, and we're going to move through this quick.
We've been called election deniers, racists, conspiracy theorists, liars. Did I leave anything out? We, the people of Bucks County, are fed up. Yes, you're hearing us loud and clear.
These are elected officials who openly and blatantly admitted to disobeying the law. How could we ever have faith in their ability to uphold the law again? The answer is we cannot, and they must resign immediately.
I've got to tell you, standing here today, listening to all these patriots and looking at how many people came out, something's wrong with the way we're conducting the elections in this county.
Name calling and outrage in Pennsylvania, enraged voters there at a wild meeting.
We're not going to stay long on this particular subject simply because they have called this race, and most importantly, the senator there that was almost effectively contesting the election, he lost to McCormick. The guy's been there like 30 years. Bob Casey, I believe, is his name. And not only that, you had these voters getting very angry that these Democratic areas, basically it's the cities, these Democratic areas were effectively violating direct Supreme Court orders, and I'm talking Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania orders not to count ballots. And ladies and gentlemen, this was common sense. This wasn't like the Republicans were trying some type of shenanigans. They were saying, listen, if you have a mail-in vote, it's got to be signed. It's got to match what they show on the records. It's got to have a date so we know what date it pertains to. I mean, there's just minimal requirements. That's pretty standard in any election. These idiots they were effectively deciding what votes they were going to count in open defiance of the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania. These people lost their marbles. This is just insanity. And you can see a lot of the residents got mad and they were like, we're not going to take it. We're not going to stand for it. And God bless them. That's exactly what is required from time to time. So moving on, we have talked about MSNBC with this election and the fact of what Joe Scarborough and his wife Mika and all the people that were supporting him. Folks, I'm telling you, there's a real possibility that they may be out of a job. They may be gone. You know, there had to be a reason they went down the kiss, the ring. I could think of another area that they were kissing of Donald Trump's, trying to make peace, if you will, after the nonsensical types of attacks they were hammering Donald Trump with the fascist comment and all these nutty end of democracy type of platitudes and comments. And I mean, these people were being, the only word I could think of is hyperbolic. I mean, these people were just insane, nothing to do with the news, complete lunacy, completely, just outright lies. And now MSNBC may be going away because clearly NBC wants to part ways with them. And I have it on good authority. Same thing's about to happen over at ABC. It's possible The View, and I'm still checking into this, there may be no more of a View. They may decide to close it, to move on. ABC does not want these type of headaches. They got the president already coming into power that is going to be taking a very, very hard look how they use the public airways that they have a license to use. That license can be revoked. You have President Trump-elect that already has sued George Snuffleupagus because he called him it rhymes with grape. Remember, I got to be careful for monetization reasons what I say, especially and specifically on YouTube. We know what we're talking about. He said that was what Donald Trump was, and that was a lie. He said that's what Donald Trump was found guilty of in that New York courtroom pertaining to, who was that Jean, I can't remember that girl's name, don't want to remember her name the more I think about it, but that was a lie too. The finding by the jury, what was that, Eugene Carroll, the finding was very clear by the jury that we did not find Donald Trump guilty of that particular crime. So slander, big time. And I think he was talking to Nancy Mace at that time that he committed this extremely serious slander, this libel. And by the way, in the law, for the most part, slander and libel are pretty well the same thing nowadays. I don't know if that case is going to go anywhere. That one to me looks a little more clear cut. You have to prove what's called actual malice to prevail because Donald Trump, of course, is a public figure of the highest kind. So it's a very high bar to overcome, but just stay tuned. I just think there's going to be a lot of changes. I think you're going to see The View may or may not be gone. You're going to see ABC News, or specifically the Disney company. They would like, Disney doesn't want any more fights with Governor DeSantis. I think they have seen the light, so to speak. They want to get away from that woke nonsense. They want to get away from the bill, the don't say gay nonsense, and they're fighting. I think they want to get out of the contention. I think what they'd rather do is what they've been doing for a long time until recently, and that is focus on family entertainment, focus on making fantastic cartoons, get out of this nonsense of trying to teach children about gay rights, queer rights. Am I a boy? Am I a girl? I mean, what are these people thinking? Just complete lunacy. And you may see some wonderful changes going on in our country, if not the world, very soon. Look how fast all these developments are now coming into reality, and President Donald Trump elect has only been the president-elect now, just over 2 weeks now? Absolutely amazing. And the world is now changing quickly. And you know what? I give all the glory to God. I mean, clearly we were in need of a miracle, and I think that is exactly what is transpiring. So let's get in and take a look at this new video. Not only do we have all these changes happening, but you have Kamala Harris. Remember, she received $1 to $2 billion, folks. They are effectively bankrupt. How do you spend that kind of money? They got caught red-handed paying Oprah $1 million to $2 million. And all them people you seen at the Kamala Harris concerts that were up there dancing or performing, that was done just to get people in there, to get a crowd, because Kamala Harris could not by herself draw a crowd that they could put on television. That's the reason why they had to turn to these celebrities, turn to these effectively paid endorsements. They had to turn into busing people. You know, they were busing people in to these venues. And what really got under my skin, and I thought was just outright fraud, they would say, oh, Beyonce is going to be here. And then either she wasn't there, or when she was there, she didn't perform. You know, the pretext was, show up, Beyonce is going to be here, and Beyonce is going to perform. And of course, she either was not there or she did not perform. If you remember, when Kamala Harris had her acceptance speech, the rumor was Beyonce was going to be there. And of course, she was not there. At least to the best of my knowledge, that's exactly what transpired. So let's listen to a quick piece of this clip and then we'll move on.
Struggling to regroup in the wake of overwhelming election losses. The party laying off long-term permanent staffers now with just 1 day's notice and no severance pay. A statement from the DNC staff union called the move a result of callous and short-sighted mismanagement by senior leadership, noting that the party would not acknowledge the extent of the layoffs or plans for future cuts. The scathing reaction from the staff union comes as Democrats search for a new leader. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison is not expected to seek a second term for the party's top spot.
So at any rate, the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is they don't have any money. You have people that are being laid off right now, today. They're being told, adios, see you later, no severance. And there's a lot of people that have not even been paid for services they have already provided. Isn't that amazing? How do you spend that kind of money and squander that kind of money? Absolutely shameful. You know what? It's more than shameful. It's outright crooked. I don't really know any other way that it can be said effectively. Oh, and I have to talk about this. You all know one of my favorite people in the world is a lady that I'm going to show you on your screen right now. And her name is Nikki Haley. And yes, I'm being tongue-in-cheek. I cannot stand her. She is truly a rhino in the strongest sense of the word. And if she's not a rhino, she's definitely jealous, and she's definitely a backstabber. I do not see any scenario where she could ever be president of the United States for one reason only. She's the one that's always going around saying, I cannot come off my stance on abortion. She's pro-life. And I don't want to talk about that subject tonight. What I'm going to tell you is, in America, I don't think any politician can get elected with a promise to pass a nationwide, you know what. I just don't see it happening. I could be wrong. I don't think it could happen in the United States of America. Not right now, because the statistics are 85% of Americans want some type of access. Now, that includes everybody. That includes everybody from one extreme all the way down to, let's say 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever. I mean, but 85% of Americans, that's what the statistics bear out. And she specifically, I mean, how many times have we heard her, I don't know, condescending voice saying something to the effect of, oh, look, there's going to be a woman president. It's either going to be Kamala Harris or it's going to be me. He's the agent of chaos. He's this, he's that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, she's back at it again. And of course, she's slamming Tulsi Gabbard, which is one of Donald Trump's nominees. I believe she is tapped to head one of the, what is the Department of, it's something like Department of Super Secrets. It's one of the secret departments. I'm just drawing the blank on what it's called. It's it houses all the secrets for the United States. And she had a few things to say about it. So let's listen.
Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Now, everybody loves that she is now saying she's a Republican. But I have always said, let's look at what they've said, what their actions are. DNI, that is the president's top intelligence advisor. It's supposed to fairly represent the views of 18 separate intelligence agencies and units. It has the authority over $100 billion annual U.S. spy budget, $100 billion U.S. annual spy budget, and it holds sway over which secrets we declassify. That's a big deal. This is a job for an honest broker without any pronounced policy biases. So hold that thought for a second. What are the facts about Tulsi Gabbard? She opposed ending the Iran nuclear deal. She opposed sanctions on Iran. She opposed designating the Iran military as terrorists who say death to America every single day. She said that Donald Trump turned the U.S. into Saudi Arabia's prostitute. This is going to be the future head of our national intelligence. In Congress, Tulsi criticized Trump's authoritarian strike against Qasem Soleimani. Now, I will remind you, he was considered the master of death in Iran. She said he had no justification whatsoever for killing him. She tried to limit Trump's war powers against Iran. She tried to cut our annual defense budget so that we couldn't punish Iran and hinder their influence. Reminder, Iran is our #1 sponsor of terrorism, and Tulsi Gabbard was.
Oh, God, I can't stand her no more. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I can't listen to her no more. It just hurts my skin to listen to her. I would just say this, even if any of that is true, it's probably taken out of context. We all know that Tulsi Gabbard has been a Democrat for a very long time, and I specifically remember Tulsi Gabbard basically taking Kamala Harris to task. We've watched that video on this program before where she confronted in one of the presidential debates back, I believe it was 2019, and she tore into Kamala Harris firm and fierce, and she has been a very staunch and fierce supporter of Donald Trump. And I can't say the same for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, there's a few words I'm thinking of, and they're not nice. She has definitely not been there to back Donald Trump. And you know what? She has been like that ever since Donald Trump came down that golden escalator. I remember back when she was the governor of South Carolina, she'd have a press conference, and man, she was ripping into Donald Trump. She was one of those Mitt Romney types where she was in there basically talking about never Trump. I guess that's probably the best way to say it, right? The never Trumper type of individuals. And I don't know about you, I cannot stand one of these politicians like this that they're just two-faced. They're just two-faced. Donald Trump forgave her for all that nonsense the first time around. And then he actually appointed her to a very high position. She was the representative to the United Nations. Remember that? So Donald Trump brought her in after all of that, welcomed her into the family. And then she violated a promise that she made Donald Trump that she would not run against him if he decided to seek the nomination, which of course he did. So she violated that promise. And you know, what's worse than that in my mind, because let's be honest about it, when you violate your word to somebody, that's a serious matter. You know, like they say, your word is your bond. At least it is mine. If I give somebody my word, I do everything I can to stand by my word, right? Well, that is bad. That's real bad. But what is probably just as bad, if not worse, is not the fact that she challenged Donald Trump in this primary. There's an argument to make that the fact that she challenged him, so to speak, actually made Donald Trump look even stronger. Because when you have a challenger, you get more attention in the press. You get more attention in the news, right? We all know that. You know, when there's an actual contest, there's more eyes on you. So I would say there's a good argument to say that up to a certain point, it benefited Donald Trump. Well, after she clearly could not win, there was just no path for her to win. She still stuck in the race. Remember the primary race for the Republican nomination? She's still stuck in the thing. And not only did she stick in the thing, she kept sticking it to Donald Trump every time she opened her mouth. She was a talking head on every program you could possibly think of, hammering and berating Donald Trump. That's when she made that comment that I was just mentioning to you about there's going to be a woman's president. It's going to be Kamala Harris or me. I mean, hubris comes to my mind. Hubris. I think that's probably the best way to explain it. And yes, y'all's comments is right on spot. Yay, God, Tulsi is far above Nikki's pay grade. She tries hard to make herself right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's exactly what you're right, Brian. Yay, God, Brian, you guys are exactly the way, you guys are exactly correct. That's exactly the way I see it. I watched this the other day. She committed, I think so too. And I don't blame Donald Trump for not bringing her back into the current administration. Donald Trump's doing a good job trying to cool the mark, like we talked about this on another episode, right? Cool the mark, like the mobsters used to do. You got all these people that you made enemies of. Well, go ahead and bring Joe Scarborough or Mika, bring them in, cool it down, cool the mark. Donald Trump's eye is on the prize. He wants to do bigger and better things, like stopping World War III, putting the United States back on the path of a fantastic economy, to have oil efficiency again, where we're self-dependent, because we have all the national resources we need right here in the United States, getting rid of all this nonsense. I mean, don't get me started. This woman here, I'm just glad she's gone, and Donald Trump is doing the right thing by getting rid of her. So let's take a look at this. One last thing I want to take a quick peek at, because I wanted to finish up my conversation on Matt Gaetz. So let's take a look at this article together here. This is here we go. All right, let's take a look at this, and I'm going to blow it up so we can see it. Hope you can see that. I'm going to read it, just a portion of it here. It says, now this is in Forbes magazine today. All right, it says, could Matt Gaetz get his House seat back or be named senator? Okay, so it's not just me talking about the senator angle on this, folks. All right, what to know after he bails as Trump's attorney general pick. Don't you like the way they do that? After he bails, you can tell what their feelings are towards him, right? And it starts up, it says, top line. Former Representative Matt Gaetz, Florida, resigned from his post in the House last week after President-elect Donald Trump picked him for Attorney General. But Gaetz withdrew as nominee, leaving the far-wing firebrand's future in doubt. I don't think so. Now, here's some key facts in this article, and I use facts in my air quotes here because I don't agree with all these facts, and that's what I want to talk about. It says Trump announced Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General on November 13th, shocking some Congress members who expressed concern about the nomination because Gaetz' controversial history, including sexual misconduct allegations. Folks, what's going on with these sexual misconduct allegations? Is it the fact that any person in power, any man in power nowadays, seems like we have to run this gauntlet of these, I don't know, accusations. I don't know where this is going and why this is being allowed to be used against seemingly every man that comes up for a position. This happened to Kavanaugh. It happened to what's that other justice? The one that back in the 90s with Anita Hill. You had I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but we know who we're talking about. Justice Clarence Thomas. He went through the same thing. And then, of course, now, look, you got Pete Hegseth going through the same thing. He has not been convicted of any type of crime. What's going on here? So you're nominated for a position or to a job in anything and everything that anybody alleged against you in your entire life, you have to give account for it? I mean, come on, Kavanaugh, they were going back. Weren't they going back to high school and talking about if he was a virgin in high school or what? Who wants that job and have to go through that? And their kids have to listen to this stuff. I mean, this is nuts. This is crazy. It's concerning. It's inappropriate. It needs to change. And we should demand more from our political leaders. I mean, if someone was convicted of a crime, then I would say that's one thing. But just to have an allegation and then they are going to berate somebody to the point where they effectively cannot fill that position or even be a candidate for that position, that's just too much in my mind, folks. I don't know if you agree with me or not. That's just the way I say it. It says Gaetz almost immediately resigned from Congress after the nod, despite being reelected earlier this month, just days before a report by the Health Ethics Committee was reportedly sent set to be released on sexual misconduct and drug allegations against him. You know what's hilarious in my mind? If I don't care who they are, if you knew everything about every individual that's in Congress and setting in judgment of him, so to speak, there's nobody with perfect bed sheets, if you know what I'm saying. Everybody's got skeletons in their closet or something that they'll want someone to know. There is nobody perfect. And to me, it just smacks of, it's just wrong. It's just evil to be holding people to these ridiculous levels. We're not electing this guy to be Pope or to be the leader of our church. This guy here is looking for a cabinet position. But again, that's just my take. And then it goes on and says, Gates specifically stated in his resignation letter that he, quote, did not or not intend to take the oath for office for the same office in the 119th Congress. We talked about that earlier today. Listen to the way it's worded. Not that he did not intend to take the oath of office for the same office of the 119th Congress, the Congress next year. It doesn't say I will not take the oath. He says I not intend to take the oath of office. You see my play on the words right there? How can you resign from an office that you have yet to accept? You have not been sworn into the office. That office technically doesn't exist. The 119th Congress is not in session. It's not a Congress. It's not in session. We're still in the 118th Congress. You see my point on that? I think he could get his job back for the 119th. He resigned from the 118th. I get it. But in January, he should be able to walk in, put his hand on the Bible, and take the oath because he was duly elected by the constituents in his district. Interesting to see how that plays out. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you guys read it the same way, but that's my take on it. And I disagree with the author of this particular article. I do not see that as I don't see that as valid. I think that he definitely could step right back. And he was elected to take that job. And I don't see it saying here, I'm not going to take the job. He says, I don't intend. Well, intend doesn't mean absolute, does it? Again, that's the J.R. Dukes take on it. Okay. And then finally says, because Gates resigned from Congress, and by the way, he still may become a senator, you cannot elect someone, or I should say a governor cannot appoint someone to serve as a House representative, but he can appoint a senator. So he still could become Senator Gates. It says, because Gates resigned from Congress, his seat must be filled through a special election in Florida, according to the Constitution, meaning he cannot just take his place in the House or be appointed to the seat. But the thing of it is, okay, he resigned, so it's got to be filled through a special election. But the term is almost over. There's no need to have a special term. My argument is he has not resigned from the 119th Congress. This guy is a lawyer. He was tapped to be the head of the DOJ. He knows this. I know this. I don't think them words were chosen at random. I think this was deliberate. I firmly believe that. After Gates stepped down, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he was working to announce a schedule for a special election immediately. He was working to establish it. There's nothing been established on that. Does that make any sense? You guys agree with that? Let's see if okay, let me check out our comments here. Yeah, okay. Let's see, where did I leave off here? Okay. Yeah, we got Trump has a press secretary. Yeah, he's announced his press secretary. He's got that real young girl. She's the youngest press secretary in U.S. history. Her name has escaped me, but man, is she a firebrand. She is feisty. I've seen interviews of hers. And at our next meeting, Brian, I'll try to pull up a clip of her so you can take a look at it. Yeah, God, I think it was to raise more campaign money and then keep it. She knew she wasn't going to win against Trump. Possibility. Yeah, right. Tulsi and the Patriot Colonel, guys, she has done tours. I watched the speech. Yep. These are good people, I think, too. I think Gates is done. If I think Gates is done. They will, if you got his House seat back, they would probably kick him out. I don't know if they could kick him out or not, Brian, because the House is controlled by the House is controlled by the Republicans. And to kick somebody out, you have to vote them out, and they don't have the votes, I would not think. It's happening to Pete. Yeah, they're trying the same thing with Pete Hegseth. I totally agree with that. Sometimes, though, the squeeze is not worth the juice, as they say. So if they withdraw one nomination, there's other people in this MAGA movement that would be more than happy and more than capable to step in. So just remember that. He's done. DeSantis said he's scheduling special election. I don't know, Sapphire. We'll see. I could be wrong. I'll save this video if I'm right about it. If Matt Gaetz, I'll go on the record now. If Matt Gaetz does not take a Senate appointment, or if he does not take another appointment inside the Trump administration that does not require congressional approval, because let's be honest about it, not a lot of people like Matt Gaetz. I get that. I have stated publicly that I was extremely upset with Matt Gaetz with what he did to Speaker. What was that? The speaker before Mike Johnson. The name will pop in my brain here in a second. I was not happy with the way that went down. Matter of fact, Matt Gaetz and him almost had a little fist fight there on the floor, because I've always liked that guy. He's pretty. I've always liked him. Kevin Johnson, is that his name? But anyway, he was an okay speaker. I liked him. He makes a lot of money for the Republicans. He's been fantastic for a lot of the candidates. So yeah, Pete will be great. I agree. You guys are making fantastic comments. They may kick him out. We will hope that doesn't happen. Yes, totally. Oh, McCarthy, right? Kevin McCarthy. Thank you, God. Thank you, yeah, God. I appreciate that. You guys have had fantastic comments on all this stuff. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody tuning in for the J.R. Dukes Power Hour. I don't want to make it go too long, so we'll pick it up. Lord willing, we'll pick it up maybe tomorrow, and we'll have another session between us. There's a lot to talk about, a lot going on, a lot to be grateful for, a lot to be happy about. I'm excited. And listen, I want you guys to know I really appreciate everybody taking time to tune in, to hear what I have to say. It humbles me, and I appreciate it. I really do. Got quite a few on the X platform. Got my friend on Twitch, and of course, everyone on the YouTube platform. You guys are great. If you haven't done so already, please hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. That way you are informed every time a video comes online. If you have any comments or anything like that, send them to me. I always appreciate comments, suggestions, anything you want to learn about, know more about. Hey, I'm here for you. I'm all ears. I'm happy to help out in any possible way that I can. I encourage each and every one of us to pray for our president, as I said earlier, and I hope that God's special anointing is on each and every one of you, and that the same anointing is on your friends and your family, especially coming up in this holiday season that's right ahead of us. Of course, we have Thanksgiving coming up next week, so it's just a great time to be with family and friends, and I pray God blesses each and every one of you. I always say, my friends, keep that mind free, never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.